show you how to crochet this cute off-the-shoulder top. For this project, I am using size 4 yarn from the brand Red Heart, and this is the 1 pound of yarn, but I don't use the whole thing. I'm also using a size 5mm hook, and the first thing that I did was create a slip knot, and after I created the slip knot, I chained a chain that is long enough to wrap around my body to cover almost everything from one side of my chest to the other, leaving a little bit of space in the middle. That way I can make the lace design later on. So after I've chained a chain that is long enough to cover that portion of my body, I'm going to go back on that chain using a triple crochet, and a triple crochet is yarn over, through the stitch, yarn over, back through the stitch, and after that you're going to be left with 3 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over, go through only one of those loops, yarn over again, go through 2 of those loops, then yarn over one last time and go through the last 2 loops, and that's what I call a triple crochet. So again, yarn over through the stitch, yarn over, back through the stitch, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over through the first loop, yarn over through the second loop, yarn over through the last 2 loops. And yeah, you're just going to continue making those triple crochets all the way down your chain until you've created your first row of triple crochets. So through 2 loops, yarn over through the last 2 loops. And it should look something like this. Now again, you're going to do the exact same thing all the way down your chain until you get to the very end, and once you reach the very end, then you're going to make sure that you go into the very last stitch of the row, create your last triple crochet of your first row, and after that you're going to chain 2, flip it over, and make sure that you go into the very first stitch right after that. That way you can keep your edges nice and straight. So just go into the first stitch, create a triple crochet on top of the previous row of triple crochets like so, and make sure that your ends are even, and they should be, as long as you make sure they go into every last stitch, every first stitch, and you chain 2 at the end of each row. So again, make sure that you go into the previous row of triple crochet. There should be a small little opening at the very top of each one, and it should look something like this. And the rest is really easy. You're just going to make row after row of triple crochet doing the exact same thing. Just remember, at the end of each row, you're going to make sure that you go into that very last stitch, make that last triple crochet, and then you're going to chain 2 because the triple crochet is a very tall stitch. You're going to flip that project over and then go into the very first stitch right after that. And that's going to keep your edges nice and straight, and after that you're simply going to continue on to your next row of triple crochet, going into every single stitch of the entire row, and once you reach the end, going into that very last stitch, and then chaining 2, flipping the project over, and just continuing with that pattern until again your project grows and grows, and until it's wide enough to cover this portion of your body, or if you want it to cover more, then it can cover more as well. It's totally up to you. I made mine a crop top, but if you would like this to be a full top where it covers all the way down to your hips, then you may want to make this portion larger, and that's perfectly fine. It's up to you. It's very customizable and easy to do, because if you want it larger, all you have to do is make more rows. If you want it smaller, then all you have to do is make less rows. So again, up to you. I wanted this to be this size, and once I was happy with how it looked like when I put the project against my body, then I decided to move on to the next step. And the next step is to make the lower portion of the top, which is the more open design. And that stitch is going to require 2 chains at the end of each row, just as you have been doing, as well as a triple crochet in the very first stitch from the end. And after you've made that triple crochet, you're actually going to chain 2, then skip the next stitch and go right into the 3rd stitch from the end of the row and create another triple crochet. And you should have just created a very wide stitch, which will differentiate from the rest of the triple crochet stitches that you have made. And after you make that triple crochet, you're going to again chain 2, then skip a stitch and make another triple crochet into the next stitch. So chain 2, skip a stitch, go into that next stitch, and create another triple crochet, and you will be left with another very wide stitch that will make up the rest of the design for your top. And you're going to continue with this pattern throughout the rest of the row, and also for a couple more rows after that. How many rows? It totally depends on you and how you like the design. So after you've completed your first row of this pattern, it should look something like this. You can see the significant difference in size, although they are both comprised of triple crochets. This is the new pattern that we need to follow. And to make the second row, you're going to again chain 2 at the end, and then reach on over to the previous row's triple crochet, and then just create a triple crochet on top of that triple crochet. Then you're going to chain 2 in between, reach on over to the next triple crochet from the previous row, and create another triple crochet right on top of it, and it should look something like this. Triple crochets on top of triple crochets, and 2 chains on top of 2 chains. Very easy, very simple to follow, and you're going to continue this all the way down the row to the very end, where then you're going to repeat the same steps, as in chaining 2 at the end, then reaching on over to the next triple crochet, and just continuing with the pattern. Again, very easy, and you're just going to make more and more rows until you're happy with the number of rows that you've created. I only created 4 rows. I thought that was enough for my crop top, and it looks really cute when I put it against myself. So for the very last part of the design, we're going to start making the scallops. At the end of the row, you're going to chain 2 and reach on over to the previous row's triple crochet as you normally would, except instead of making 1 triple crochet on top of that triple crochet, you're actually going to make 8 double crochets inside of the same exact stitch. And a double crochet is just yarn over through the stitch, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over through the last 2 loops. And if you're unsure of how to make these stitches, I do have a Crocheting for Beginners video that I will link in the description box below, and it has every stitch that I use, just in a more beginner-friendly tutorial. So after you've created your 8 double crochets inside of the same stitch, you're left with a wonderful little scallop. And after that, you're going to chain 1, then slip stitch into the next triple crochet from the previous row, and then chain 1 again, and create your next scallop into the next triple crochet from the previous row. So you're always going to be working inside of the triple crochets from the previous row. So again, you're going to make your 8 double crochets inside of the same exact stitch, and after you've created your 8 double crochets inside of that 1 stitch, you're going to be left with another lovely little scallop, and it should look something like this. So after that, you're going to chain 1, slip stitch into the next triple crochet from the previous row, then chain 1, go into the next triple crochet from the previous row, and crochet 8 double crochets to form a scallop. Now, if you don't want the scallops to be as large as mine, I would suggest that you only make 5 double crochets inside of these stitches instead of 8. I really like my scallops to be rather large, so I go with 8, but if you'd rather them be smaller, then I would suggest 5. But again, it's your top, so it's totally up to you. So you're just going to continue with that pattern all the way to the end of the row, and after you've completed your entire row of scallops, it should look something like this. Now if you want the scallops to be more separated, then all you would have to do is slip stitch into 2 triple crochets from the previous row instead of just 1, and that should space out your scallops a little bit more. So once you reach the end of the row and you've created your last scallop, you're going to go into the very last stitch, and then, well, you don't have to do this, but I wanted to do this just to make the ends more even. I'm going to single crochet all along the side here just to clean it up a bit, and also make it easier for when I do the lace design. But again, this is optional, but highly recommended. So all I'm doing is single crocheting 3 times into each of the large stitches that we created. Sorry, I got cut off. There you go. See, single crochets inside of each large stitch that we created. And then once we get into the more tightly made stitches of triple crochet, then I just make a single crochet inside of each stitch. That way everything is nice and even and cleaned up. And once I reach the end of that, I'm just going to chain 1, flip it over, and single crochet my way back down. And after I have made my way back down, I'm going to make the strap for the lace design. So when I am again at the bottom where the scallops are, I'm going to chain a chain of around 115 because I want it to be really long. That way I can have that back and forth lace up design, and in order to make that, this chain needs to be really long. So after I've chained my chain of about 115, I actually don't remember how many I chained, but I remember it was over 100. Then I'm going to cut the yarn from the yarn ball, grab the excess yarn, bring it through the last loop, and then give it a tug, and that seals my project. So after that, I am actually going to go over to the other side of the top and do the exact same thing. You see how the edges are not very smooth as opposed to when I make those 2 rows of single crochet? Well, that's why I make those 2 rows of single crochet. So I'm going to attach the yarn to the bottom of this project like so, and then continue with those 2 rows of single crochet that I did on the other side. So go 3 times into each of the large stitches that we made, and then once I reach the top, I'm going to flip it over and make my way down. And once I've made my way down, I'm going to make my other strap of the same number of stitches. Or if you're like me and you forgot how many chains you made for the strap, then you just line up the 2 straps and make sure that they're even. So after you have done that and you have both of your straps, now it's time to lace them up, which is really easy. All you have to do is grab 1 strap from one side and kind of align it to where you would like it to be. I like to give myself an idea of how I'm going to align everything and make sure that the straps are even. That way there's enough space for both of them and it doesn't look too crowded or uneven. So I'm going to lace them up like this, although it's going to actually look better once they are actually laced up. So once you have decided how you want the design to look, then all you have to do is put your hook through the stitch and bring the strap through that stitch, and pull it through with your hands. And there you go. One side is attached to the other. Perfect. Now you're going to take that same strap, reach it on over to the opposite side, and attach it the exact same way. Just use your hook to bring it through that stitch, and either bring the whole strap through with that hook if you can, or if not, then use your hands to bring it through. Really simple. So you're just going to continue doing that all the way to the top, and once you've finished doing that, then you're going to do the exact same thing to the opposite strap. So after you have laced up both straps, you can tie them at the very top, and you can either be done with this project and have a strapless crop top, or you can continue and make the cuffs that go along with this off-the-shoulder look. And in order to make the cuffs, all you have to do is grab your yarn, make a slip knot, and then kind of make a mini version of your top. And you'll see what I mean in a bit. So you're going to make a chain that is long enough to wrap around your arm. Make sure that you give a little bit of an allowance. That way you don't make it too tight on your arm. So I would say that make the chain long enough to wrap around your arm, just barely, and then add a stitch or two. That way it won't suffocate your arm and be too tight. You do want a little bit of room, that way it can be comfortable and you can just slide the top and the cuffs on and off with ease. So after you've made that chain long enough to wrap around your arm but not suffocate it, then you're going to go into every stitch using a triple crochet, just like you did for the top. The difference, however, is when you reach the end of the first row of triple crochet, you're actually going to attach both ends of this project together and make a circle. And in order to attach them, you're going to take one side of the project and align it with the other, and then slip stitch 3 times into both the stitches, or both the sides I mean, and once they're attached, then it should look something like this, and it should fit your arm cozily without cutting off any circulation. So you can try it on then and adjust accordingly. So after you have attached the 2 ends and you're happy with the size, then you're just going to continue making those triple crochets all around. So instead of going back and forth for your rows, you're just going to continue in a circle for your rows. And I believe I made 3 rows of this triple crochet, and after I have completed the 3 rows of this, then I moved on to the next step, which was the larger version of the triple crochet stitch, where I skipped a stitch in between in order to make a large gap. And I only made 2 rows of that stitch, and after I made 2 rows of the larger stitch, then I went on and made my scallops. And of course these scallops need to be smaller than the ones that I used on my top. So because I made 8 double crochets inside of 1 stitch for my top, I decided to only make 5 double crochets for each stitch to make my scallops for my little cuff. So after I've completed my row of scallops for the cuff, I sealed off the project by cutting off the yarn from the yarn ball and then bringing the excess yarn through the last stitch and giving it a tug. Then I went ahead and made another cuff the exact same way. So after you've made your 2 cuffs, the last step is to attach them, which is really easy. You're just going to decide where you would like to attach the cuffs. Make sure that your project is nice and even, and then once you've determined which side you want the cuffs to be attached to, then you're going to attach your yarn to that side and then chain a small chain of about 15 but you should measure this out depending on how much room you want your cuffs to have. If you think you're going to wear this top and you're going to want to raise your arms, then you may need more space, so make a longer chain. If you want the cuffs to be very close and you don't expect to move your arms around too much, then you can make a smaller chain. Again, completely up to you. So I made a chain of about 15, although it does look longer. Maybe I made it longer. I'm not sure. Again, I don't count rows or stitches or chains because I'm just horrible, and I just go with what I think looks good instead of numbers and counting and stuff. So after you've chained your chain of how many chains you want, then you just attach the chain to the cuff with a slip stitch and then cut the yarn from the yarn ball. Bring over the excess yarn through the last stitch and give it a tug. And now your cuff is attached to your top, and now it kind of has a sleeve. Then you're going to go on over to the other side and do the exact same thing. You're going to attach the yarn, chain, and then attach the cuff to that chain. And after you've done that, then you are completely done with this project and you have a new lovely crochet top that you can either rock yourself or give as a gift, and they will absolutely love it because look how adorable this is. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, please visit the description box below first. I do have a message for you guys as well as the link to the blog post that is associated with this tutorial, so if you found some of this a bit confusing or maybe a little too fast for you, I also have a blog post that will hopefully be more clear as to the various steps you need to take in order to make this crochet top. And if you still have questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And if you know the answer to a question, please, please, please give the answer to the person asking the question. I would really appreciate that and maybe learn something from you as well. Thank you again for watching. If you enjoyed it, please give a thumbs up and also click the red subscribe button if you have not already so I can see you next time. Bye!